This belt, it means the world to me, you know? For the better part of the last 3 months, I've spent my time reviewing books, anime, video games, and so forth. And to have this in my hands and be recognized as the best reviewer on YouTube, I can't tell you the feeling that it gives me when I just look at this beautiful piece of gold in my hands. Not anymore! Not anymore! You people sit behind your cellular devices, your computer screens, your monitors, looking at Cactus Josh like I'm some sort of sideshow amusement, not even bothering to leave a like, a comment, or a subscription. I'm done! You hear me? I have poured my blood, sweat, and the tears in the past 3 months reviewing everything from books into anime and to video games, and you can't even give me the better part of a glance? I'm done. You hear me? Cactus Josh is done with YouTube. I'm walking out of here. This is an outrage. I am done with all. Ow! Have mercy. Sorry for the inconvenience there, folks. Cactus Josh might have walked out on YouTube, but he didn't say nothing about coming to the DudeTube, because today, on the Acorn Book Club, the youngest book club on the face of the internet, your regular host has decided to team up with the hippest cat in the land, Dude Love, to review one of the Dudesters' most favorite books of all time, the first autobiography of the man, the myth, the hardcore legend himself, Mick Foley. And despite the fact that I'm in the same attire as the Dudester, I am breaking character, dropping the kayfabe act, and I'm going straight to Josh mode because I just cannot do that voice for the entire video. Now, as a disclaimer, I will say this was the first book that Foley wrote and published. Now, having said that, this was published somewhere around 2000, just after his WrestleMania 2000 main event match, which means that some of his best matches in his later years in his career, things like his hardcore match with Randy Orton, his hardcore match with Edge at WrestleMania, and so forth, some of those matches, they're not in this book. They took place after this book was published, so just giving y'all a heads up on that. But of course, having said all that, there are tons of matches in this that Foley recounts that will blow your mind. Matches from his death matches in Japan, to his matches in ECW and WCW, to when he wins the WWF title in 1998 from The Rock, with a little interference from Stone Cold. Now, of course, with autobiographies by famous people, there's a lot of skepticism to where they actually write it themselves, or if they just give input to a ghostwriter that does all the work for them. Most of the time, it's the latter, but in this instance, it's the former. Foley does all the writing himself. He does not leave all the work to a ghostwriter with him just telling the stories about what his wrestling career was like and so forth. He does all the writing himself, and he makes that abundantly clear early on. Toward the beginning, Foley states he believes anyone, even non-wrestling fans, can enjoy his book. While that may indeed be possible, I personally believe it'd be difficult since nearly the entire book is about wrestling, outside of the early chapters about Foley's upbringing and his college experience. And that's not a knock on the book itself, as that's what most of us know Foley from. I just think it'd be challenging for a non-wrestling fan to indulge in an over 700-page book almost exclusively dedicated to wrestling and a lot of violent matches on top of all that. Now, of course, having said all that, I could be dead wrong about my opinion. You might not be a wrestling fan, but you might be watching this video about me reviewing a book about a wrestler. Who knows? I might be wrong. I mean, he was a #1 New York Times bestseller, so there's a lot of people out there that bought and read his book, and I assume at least some of those people have never watched wrestling or just don't like wrestling in general. And of course, if you're not a wrestling fan and you have not read this book, you might be wondering why a pudgy guy with his front teeth knocked out, whose finishing move is putting on a dirty sweat sock with a smiley face drawn on it and shoving his hand into his opponent's mouth, might be cause for reading the book and why he is even considered a popular wrestler in the first place. And to that I say, you don't know Mick Foley. Pro wrestling is an odd world that pits chiseled bodybuilder lookalikes with Olympic-level high-flying acrobats to perform a choreographed semblance of athletic theater before a live audience. Mick Foley is neither chiseled nor an acrobat. He can't body slam Andre the Giant. He can't swing between the middle and top ropes or do a swanton bomb from high above, but I'll be damned if I say he can't entertain. The man has put on some of those entertaining hardcore matches on this planet and in several different continents, mind you. From losing his ear in Munich, Germany, to wrestling Terry Funk in King of Death matches in Japan, where the ropes were replaced with barbed wire, where wooden boards were rigged with C4 explosives, and where the ring was set to detonate after a 10-minute time limit. to going to back to America, to be thrown off the Hell in the Cell by The Undertaker, only to climb back up the Hell in a Cell to get thrown through the Hell in a Cell into the ring, which was not planned, by the way, to wrestling the rest of the match, getting thrown into the cage, getting planted on thumbtacks twice, and then the part that people don't remember was after the match, he did not go straight to the hospital. He actually had to wait and run interference with the main event in that match, which was a first blood match with Stone Cold Steve Austin and Kane, only to get a chair shot to the head again by The Undertaker, and then go to the hospital. And these are just a few examples, by the way. This book also encapsulates Foley's charm and witticism greatly, demonstrating why he's such a lovable guy. From the lighthearted ripping of his good friend Al Snow, to the many nicknames Foley gives his penis, and no, that one's not a joke, to the insight of his personal life and love interests dating back from his college days up until when he meets his wife Colette, and later on as well when they have kids, you get to see why Foley is such a beloved figure not only in wrestling, but in life in general. But of course, the vast majority of content in this book revolves around wrestling. There's a good reason this book is over 700 pages. It starts from when Foley is an amateur wrestler in high school to when he is in attendance to when Jimmy Superfly Snuka jumps off the top of the steel cage on the Don Morocco at Madison Square Garden, to when he goes to college and starts making wrestling tapes with his friends, when he first introduces the character of Dude Love, to when he starts training in Pennsylvania to become an actual professional wrestler, to when he starts wrestling independently, eventually gets a contract with WCW, leaves WCW, he works more independent shows, works in Japan, works overseas in various countries and continents, works in ECW and in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, to when he eventually gets signed by the WWF and becomes Mankind, and of course, he introduces his three faces of Mankind, Cactus Jack, and Dude Love, to when he eventually becomes WWF Champion. There's a good reason why this book is 700 pages, but simultaneously, if you are a wrestling fan and you enjoy a good story, this book will not feel like 700 pages. I would say it would come closer to feeling like 200 pages more than 700 pages, which is the mark of a great storyteller. Now, when I say there's a lot of wrestling content in here, I don't just mean Foley discusses his best matches in depth and then just leaves it at that. No. Foley discusses his good matches, his bad matches, his travel stories, his backstage stories with some of possibly your favorite wrestlers, guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, The Undertaker, Diamond Dallas Page, the late Owen Hart, etc., to when he goes overseas, some of the stories he had when he was in foreign countries, when he was in Japan, when he was in Africa, when he was in Mexico, Canada, wherever. Wherever he wrestled, he has a story there. To also having input from some of wrestling's most notorious figures, guys like Vince McMahon, Eric Bischoff, Paul Heyman, fellow wrestlers, but also input from his wife Colette, some of his friends that weren't wrestlers, and that get input into his character, into his storylines. There is a lot to unpack here, as I've mentioned before, but it's not just on-screen stuff or in-ring material. There's a lot of stuff in here that doesn't get shown on tape a lot, that really gets discussed in depth in the book, on page and paper. So, I highly recommend you check it out if you're a wrestling fan, and even if you're not a wrestling fan, read it anyway, because it's that good of a book. And with all that being said, it is now time for yours truly to cut one final promo regarding the final review of Mick Foley's autobiography. I give this book a resounding A+. Now, the Dudester is well aware that he earlier opined that if you are not a wrestling fan or have never been one, you may have difficulties enjoying reading a 700-page book that mainly revolves around wrestling. But having said all that, I still think you should give it a chance. This book is simply tremendous, and regardless of your affinity for wrestling or not, I still say that this book was $8. Of course, that might be different. I bought this a couple years ago, but the fact that this book that's this long and this high quality is only $8, you should at least give it a chance and give Mick Foley your undivided attention, at least for a few minutes, if not for a few days, a few weeks, or a few months, depending on how quickly you read this book and how much you enjoy it. But of course, if you are a wrestling fan, or at the very least used to be one, and you have not read this book yet, you are doing yourself an incredible disservice. Go ahead, find you a copy, and buy it, because I promise you, you will not regret it. Everything that occurs in this book happens during the prime period of wrestling, back before the independent promotions became just a figment of the past, back when the Attitude Era was kicking off, back when the Monday Night Wars were still going strong, back when WCW and the WWF and the original ECW were all in their heyday, back when The ratings for WCW Monday Nitro and WWF Raw's War were reaching unprecedented heights. People were in awe of how much viewership these two shows were getting on a weekly basis. Back when you couldn't walk through school without seeing an NWO shirt or an Austin 316 shirt. All of this happens back when wrestling was in its most popular era. And I highly recommend for anyone that has ever enjoyed wrestling, even with a smidge of excitement, to go read this book because it is that good. And Mick Foley, if you are watching this, which I highly doubt, but hey, you never know, you are an incredible storyteller, my friend, so thank you. And please enjoy retirement. Please don't get body slammed into any more thumbtacks or get hit with barbed wire anymore, because you've done enough. More than enough. And with all that being said, my friends, have a nice day. Bang, bang!